All right, everybody, I think we're good to go now. That's most people now on. Great. Okay, welcome to this month's webinar. My name is Nick Cohn and I'm going to be presenting for you today. Title today's webinar is Top Tips for Digital Safety. We wanted to keep this title pretty non-techie. You could call this cybersecurity, online safety, online security. There's a million names out there for it. But it's essentially some tips that we want to pass on to you as end users off the back of some of the kind of biggest vulnerabilities that we see and the biggest problems that people can get caught out with nowadays. So I'm going to kick off with a bit of an introduction about us, who we are and what we do. Then going to come on with some truths, some facts, some information around, why is this a thing? Why should I be concerned? Does this apply to me? And so on. Then going to go a little bit deeper into the motive behind this, and kind of discuss very briefly what and why people commit these types of crimes. What's to gain from it from a criminal perspective. We'll then cover off a few top tips. Again, try and not be technical, but there will be the odd point that might touch on stuff that's technical. So if you need any further explanation at all, please do throw questions into the Q&A. You can do this during the presentation, but also at the end. And similarly, all of my details are there. I'll put them up at the very end. If you want to reach out to me directly, give me a call or drop me an email. Happy to go through and answer any questions that you might have. So, who are we? We are PCR. We are an IT service company based in Glasgow, and we work across the UK with all different shapes and sizes of clients as their IT department. So, our focus with our clients is around ensuring they are compliant from a security perspective. We manage things like Windows updates and security patching on their behalf. But we also work with tools like Office 365 and help our clients be more productive, whether that's with remote workers or working the way they work with their clients. And then that all falls onto modern devices as well. So that's things like Windows 10, using devices that can fit in your pocket if that's appropriate to the way you need to work. It's not just about a PC on a desk, which is where we were maybe kind of 10 years ago. We're part of the Arrow Group, spread across the United Kingdom. We've got 8 offices. As a combined group, we work with IT, but we also work with comms, which is the core of what the group's around. So we can help with anything mobile, voice, and data. So that can be supplying the devices that fit in your pocket and getting them connected up to the networks, or that might be putting things like fibre broadband or VoIP phone systems into your offices. So enough about us, on to the topic of today. So a little bit about the truth. Now, these slides are not meant to scare you, but it is the reality of where we are. And I felt that I couldn't really talk about being safe online if I didn't tell you some of this information for those that aren't aware of it. So some real startling numbers. 6.4 billion. Now that's the number of fake emails sent around the world every day. And these are the kinds of emails that using decent spam filters should catch for you. But still, with the best technology in the world, you still will have things that will land, and it's important that you and your wider teams as end users are alert to that fact. Do not trust everything that lands in your inbox, because 6.4 billion emails that get sent every day are fake. 1.9 billion. Now, this is the total number of personal records that were compromised over a 14-month period in the US, over 17 and into 18. Now, with GDPR coming into play now, we've actually seen this week alone a couple of very high-profile cases, notice of fines, I think they're known as, one for British Airways and one for Marriott. Now, this applies to any organisation, any shape and size. I think it's up to 4% of global turnover could be the fine that comes from the Information Commission's office. But you can see just from those numbers the kind of startling extent to which our information might be out there. So it's really important that we, again, are alert to where we're giving our information to and what we're doing when we're online. 1,500 or 1,464, that's the number of US government officials in one state alone that use password 123 as their password. Now, there's two pieces to this. One is, why does the IT administrators allow that to be a password? That's one part, so complexity. But number two, as user education in there as well. None of us should be running with passwords that are set like that. Passwords should have complexities, and I'll come on to a little bit more discussion around even passwords themselves. Are they safe later on? But ultimately, that just shows you, and that's in one US state alone. Imagine what that is globally. We're literally just leaving our back doors lying wide open, and we're asking for hackers to come in and abuse the situation. And $750,000, and this is the amount that was lost by a businessman in a scam in the US. I think it was in 2018. And this was a small business. This was not a massive business, and that was the amount that he lost because of a scam. Don't know the detail of the scam, but ultimately you can see the numbers that are here. Kind of pretty frightening. 34% of organizations see careless and unaware employees as their biggest vulnerability. So why aren't organizations training more regularly? We give people handling training, health and safety training. We ensure they have driving licenses if they're going to drive our company vehicle, but we still allow them to use technology, knowing that they are probably one of our biggest reasons for a vulnerability to our car. So it's important that you ensure that webinars like this are available for your teams so that they understand themselves, how they need to act and be aware when they're online. And then 70% of organizations are not prepared to respond to a cyber attack. So what we're seeing nowadays is it's very likely, big or small, you will receive some sort of attack, but 70% of companies do not have a process in place. So similar to the way that you might have a disaster recovery procedure or a business continuity procedure in the event that something happens to your building or to a part of your organization, most organizations do not even have a process in place of how they respond to a cyber attack. So again, it's thinking about, what are our processes in place? And that's something that your IT people can work on with you, or indeed we can help you with, to make sure you have a process in place and you know what to trigger. And then 90% of attacks start with some sort of email. And I was actually quite alarmed. I knew the number was high, but I didn't actually expect it to be as high as that. So again, email is your most vulnerable port of call by quite some distance. So if you are going to experience a cyber attack, it's very likely that that's going to originate from some sort of email that somebody has. So now that we've read, listened to a bit about the truths, why are people doing it? Where does the motivation come from for people? So firstly, financial gain. This is most likely the reason an organization gets attacked. Criminals are looking to gain financially, and this is often by breaching data to then feed identity theft. Third-party fraud is fueled by identity theft, and breached data gives criminals the information they need to take over someone's identity. Now, criminal gangs are well organised and they operate on a very commercial basis. There's a supply chain. Those that steal the data are unlikely to be the same criminals who commit the identity theft and fraud. The dark web, which is this kind of underworld that exists on the internet, this provides a marketplace for stolen credentials, and with those that have stolen personal data selling it onto those who wish to then commit the fraud. Now, cyber attacks can even come with financial demands. This is a bit of a modern take on blackmail, and this can affect organisations of all sizes as well as individuals. There are many variations of this. For example, hackers take over a victim's computer, freeze it or encrypt it, and then they offer to reinstate the access after a ransom has been paid. Another variation led to a recent case where guests at a hotel in Austria were prevented from entering their rooms until a ransom had been paid. Now, this hotel was reportedly removing these electronic locks and reverting to old-fashioned keys. And that's not the only example of a company post some sort of online cyber attack, moving from a digital online solution to something that's quite old-fashioned and archaic because they don't understand how to secure themselves. Therefore, it's easy just to roll back to the way we did things in the 90s. Not necessarily the outcome that you guys would want to have in your businesses, is to start doing things the old-fashioned way. Another motive is political or social. Hacktivism, again, while I was doing my research to build the webinar, it's like a new phrase, and I've used this a few times this week. Hacktivism, now this is a combination of hacking and activism, and this involves breaking into a system for political or social reasons. Now, until relatively recently, this was seen as the domain of underground organisations, such as Anonymous. However, the 2016 US election has really put focus on the role that governments might play in furthering their aims through hacking activity. Hacktivists also mount cyber attacks to stop to stop their targets carrying out normal activity. Now, these are known as denial of service attacks. Governments and political bodies are often the target of denial of service attacks to stop them in their tracks in their everyday work. Now, intellectual challenge. This type of hacker plays to the stereotype of a techie who lives in a virtual world and turns to hacking for both the intellectual challenge and the adrenaline rush of breaking into a network. Those who hack for intellectual stimulation are not necessarily criminals. They also could be white hat hackers who help organizations explore their vulnerabilities so that they can put defenses in place. This is also often referred to as ethical hacking, where we turn the bad of hacking into the good for creating defenses. Some organizations even do offer up some sort of bounty where if someone does discover a vulnerability and they report it into them, they will actually pay them and have them help them close that vulnerability. So the why of cybercrime is complex. And in addition to the motivations already mentioned, hackers could also be motivated by revenge or the wish to spy to gain commercial or political advantage. The different motivational factors for hacking can also coincide. A hacker who is looking for an intellectual challenge may be happy to also use their interests to make money or advance their own political agenda. Cyber criminals are acquiring, laundering, spending, and reinvesting around $1.5 trillion of profits a year. So that's dodgy money being used in public space for investment purposes once it's been laundered. And the number up on screen, the highest earning cyber criminals are making up to £1.4 million. Scary. That's almost as much as a FTSE 200 CEO makes. A mid-level cyber criminal can make something in the region of about $650,000 a year. And that's more than double the US president's salary. Entry-level cyber criminals, your graduate level, makes around $30,000. And that's significantly more than what you would earn as a graduate in the UK doing something a little more ethical. So we've looked at the truths around the facts. We've then looked at why would somebody be motivated to instigate some sort of theft or hack. There's no difference to this type of crime than there is to someone breaking into somebody's house. The main difference actually from the hacker's perspective is this is actually easier because it's easy to sit at the other side of the world and cover up your footprint than it would be to physically visit somewhere. Quite scary and quite startling. Excuse me. So now that we have covered off a little bit about the whys, we're going to talk around some of the top tips that we recommend. Look at here. So I'm going to put this and grab a drink of water, put this up for you for a second. Okay, so spoofed and faked emails. These are very common. As we said earlier on, 90% of hacks actually originate in an email, so this is very relevant. A fake or spoofed email is one that appears to come from one sender, but actually comes from another. Sometimes this is really obvious, and could be where the name or the email address is totally different from the actual address. But on other occasions, the actual address that you see is forged, with the sending account only visible in the code which sits behind the email. Now, most of us can spot this or have a spam filter that might identify that, but sometimes these get past us, particularly when we're busy, tired, or even rushing to get through a task. There are techniques out there that can be set up to verify the sender's domain, i.e. if it says it's coming from one place but it's actually not, you can then have something in place that would block that, but these need to be set up by the sender, so this isn't something that you can do if you're taking security seriously. It's estimated only around about half of domain names, so half of the services out there that will present email accounts actually have this set up today. There have also been some high-profile spoofed emails. One example that I managed to find, a fake email was reporting that a Swedish company received an offer from Samsung to purchase their business. The news spread and the valuation grew by 50% overnight. And this was all from a fake email being sent. Quite something. So, telltale warnings that you can look for. I've put some examples up on screen just now, but easy signs that you can look for that would help you identify something that is fake. So, spelling or grammar issues. We all have spell check, so if something doesn't read properly, there is a high chance that it isn't the native language of the person that's sending the email. This could indicate some sort of foreign hacker. We on our support help desk have seen so many emails that are, set in this way where you, just by looking at it, you know something is not right. Especially if this is someone that you're emailing on a regular basis. If they suddenly look different, if their signature is different, or their font is massively out from what you're used to, be vigilant and challenge that. And don't be afraid to lift the phone to somebody to say, oh, by the way, I received this email. Is this from you? If you reply to one of these fake emails, there's a chance you could end up in having a dialogue with the actual hacker. And we have witnessed several of those where the hacker embodies the person. Therefore, you think you're talking to the right person, but you're actually not. So do not be afraid to use other methods of contact to verify an email if you think it doesn't look right. Blurry or strange signatures at the bottom of the email, or even no signature present. If the company and the person you're used to emailing does normally present themselves with a professional signature, and then suddenly you've got something that looks totally different, question that. Someone emailing you with an invoice or to update you of new payment details. We encourage our clients to follow a process that we have, where people in our accounts team will always verify away from email bank details when we first set somebody up. Once we then have that supplier set up, we will never change their details without re-verifying through that process. You do see people less announcing new bank details via email because of these reasons, but historically you would have got an email from someone saying, hey, we have moved office and we've changed bank details. Always query these and have processes away from emails that allows you to verify that. And that might be that you get the email and then you lift the phone and then you verify and then you're comfortable with that way. Certain industry regulation bodies actually disallow their professionals in that industry. Legal is a good example of that, where they're not allowed to confirm bank details via email anymore because of spoofing attacks. And in another one, an email might come from you, or come from someone, that you don't know or have any connection to. It sounds quite obvious, but we've actually witnessed people ending up having quite detailed conversations with people they don't even know who they are. Again, it's like don't speak to strangers, but we have witnessed quite a lot of people speak to strangers. So again, have your wits about you. Just because you're online does not mean that you're in a safe bubble because the person can't physically reach you. They can do all sorts of other harms. Finally, when I was doing my research around email was created to send technical and scientific information. It was never ever built to send sensitive information, yet we use that. And the actual protocols behind email are incredibly straightforward, very hackable, very spoofable, if that's even a word. So again, just think about what platforms you're using. There are plenty of services out there. Give you an example, if you're sending a contract to be signed, we do that regularly. We use DocuSign. There's several other services out there, but that allows our receiver to verify the documents so they're never going to sign off anything that isn't something that they believe. So again, just think about these things. Think about how you're presenting yourself and also how you're taking information in from other people. So, passwords and identity attacks. Passwords are not safe. Period. End of. Many years ago, when the password was introduced, we had physical lines of defense. So what I mean by that is everything was stored within a company's physical premises, and the only way of gaining access was through you either being inside the office or some sort of virtual secure tunnel would have been created. When we started to open more of these tunnels, we introduced complexity requirements. So you would have things like mandatory uppercase, a combination of uppercase and lowercase, a mix of numbers and letters and so on. And also we then introduced password expiry. So again, if your password was ever breached, it would be rotated every 30, 60, 90 days or whatever that would be. So again, it would be changed regularly enough that would stop a hacker from sitting in the background. Now this was useful against what we would call brute force attacks, and this is where the hacker tries many combinations, or what's also called credential stuffing, and this is where passwords are hacked on one service and are assumed to be the same on other services. This is where you might sign up to something with a Gmail email address and password, and then they will assume that password might be used by you on actual Gmail or other places. So again, quite an easy way to hack one service and use the credentials to get into another. Now, in today's world of the cloud and the work anywhere mentality, which we think is great, by the way, we only need to access a website and key in our details, and access is then granted. Now, take the spoofed email scenario from my last tip. Imagine someone pretending to be someone else sends you an email. This email has a link, which takes you to a website, which you then need to log on to using your Office 365 username and password. Now, this could present itself as someone external, internal, potentially, sharing some content through SharePoint, which is something that lots of us do and use nowadays. Now, imagine if the website isn't what you think it is, but forwards you to one that you think you recognise. So it might even send you onto a 404 page not found link. You'll think nothing of it. You've given over your credentials by this point. So your username will have been captured and then sold, as I mentioned before, possibly in the dark web. Months can go by with your information being out there, with a hacker grooming and monitoring your activity. And we've witnessed people, hackers, having access to credentials for a certain service, logging into the service, but over a period of weeks or months not actually doing anything until they wait for the right moment to pounce. So I will repeat what I started with again. Passwords are not safe. Now, this is where two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication come into play. A username identifies you on a list. A password is your first factor of authentication. Now, if you add in some sort of text message or a mobile app or even a checksum that you key in from a card reading device, you've then got a second factor to authenticate, not just sitting with a password. Now, we've had this for years with internet banking, and we've now got this nearly everywhere. Services like Office 365, Gmail, Dropbox, Amazon, the list is endless. So if a service offers you 2FA or MFA, depending on what they call it, take it, take it, take it. Now, we've got to balance security and usability, because we sometimes will hear from people 2FA can just be annoying because I've then got to have this device with me, or I've then got to key in that second bit of information. But it's exactly the same as the annoying 100 mil rule that we all have when we take liquids through airport security. You understand why that is in place. It's for the security of you and your fellow passengers on board that plane. And whether we like it or not, we go through airport scanners and we just work that into our day. 2FA is exactly the same. It is just as important. When I was doing my research on this, startling that in 2018, under a year ago, 90% of people that use Gmail do not have 2FA enabled. Gmail offer a free service that anyone can set up, and then you can authenticate with a text or with an app. But majority of people, almost everybody, doesn't even have it enabled. Quite scary. Certain services also have got things like whitelisting options, so you can make it smoother for people when they're in certain locations. And what I mean by that is if we were to mark your office as a safe place for a certain service, you can then potentially not require 2FA when you're in the office. So that's, a way to cut down on something that can be annoying. Similarly, you can do things like device approval. So 2FA will only kick in when you are on unknown devices. But once you've approved a device, 2FA won't kick in, or you can, I think Zero the accounts package does the ability to push that out for 30 days. So you'll only ever have to approve a device once every 30 days. Things like that you can do to make life a little bit easier. 2FA is a must. And personally, I would get this enabled in everything you've got, work, personal. If it's offered, take it. I have it now turned on to all social media and everything I use, and I've even had notifications from Facebook of examples of people that have tried to hack into my account. So it's definitely protected me. So, public Wi-Fi. Now this is the one that people I'm expecting will know the least about, but it is something we use every single day, possibly just for personal use, but also possibly for work as well. And we are used to going to a coffee shop and connecting to the Wi-Fi. That might be to save our data bundles. It might be because the 4G signal in that premises is pretty weak. Or it might even be that you're abroad and you don't have access to your normal tariffs and you want to make sure you can connect. So business people are using public Wi-Fi at an unprecedented level, and this is for collaborating with co-workers, suppliers, and customers. There are many good reasons for public Wi-Fi. It's convenient, widely available, and generally free. A recent study showed that 78% of people around the world actively look for public Wi-Fi. And of those, 72% have complete confidence connecting without any regard to security. Public Wi-Fi, though, is covered with security risks. Pressure from work, and I've been here myself, also drives people to connect to the first available network that will allow us on. A survey by Kaspersky Lab, who are a security company, found that people are more likely to be robbed of their data than their money when travelling abroad, as 3 in 10 senior business managers have been hit by cybercrime whilst abroad. According to the same research report, cyber criminals target people whilst abroad, as 82% connect to free public Wi-Fi at airports, hotels, cafes, and restaurants. And these, for the most part, are completely unsecured. Now, some wireless networks may use older encryption standards, which is not great from a security perspective. Wireless Encryption Protocol, WEP, which you might have seen around. This is one of the early encryption schemes that were introduced for Wi-Fi, but it was found to be very weak and it was easily susceptible to cracking its code. Now, Wi-Fi Protected Access, or WPA as it's referred to, was intended to replace WEP, and that was supposed to become the standard that we all worked around. Now, another issue that can arise when attempting to use public Wi-Fi is the risk of joining a rogue wireless network. In such case, an attacker creates a rogue hotspot with the intent to unleash what's known as a man-in-the-middle attack on suspecting victims that join the rogue network. This type of attack allows an attacker to intercept the communication between you and the servers of the websites you're visiting. This then allows them to read, insert, and modify messages. And what I mean as an example for this, if you look at the middle image we've got there, where it looks to be an iPhone and it's got 2 networks called Coffee Shop, one of these could be the actual coffee shop. The other one could be somebody, a hacker, sitting not too far away with a rogue network that you think is that coffee shop, and it would be so easy for you then just to connect to it and get going. So devices are known to probe for wireless networks as well, and attackers can use that to their advantage. An attacker's rogue Wi-Fi hotspot can pretend to act as your home network or as a public network that you might come across at a coffee shop. Instead of connecting to a real public Wi-Fi hotspot, your device ends up connecting to the attacker's rogue hotspot. And now the attacker is sitting between you and the actual wireless network, so they're able to see all of your online traffic. Another tactic that can be used is to create a public Wi-Fi network called free Wi-Fi, and then you just need to sit and wait for these victims to join. Naturally, lots of people will try to connect, especially if free Wi-Fi internet service is being offered. So if you're away from home, say at a coffee shop, and all of a sudden your computer shows that you're connected to your home network, chances are that you've caught someone has caught your computer's broadcast request. In some cases, if you're browsing a website that you know that should be encrypted, such as your bank or social networking site, but the page is actually showing without that, so it's HTTP rather than HTTPS, then there's a high chance that someone is performing a man-in-the-middle attack on you, and they're going to try and capture your login credentials. Generally speaking, as a precaution, you should not engage in any sort of sensitive web browsing, such as accessing your bank account or entering payment details when connected to public Wi-Fi. And you should also consider these measures, to keep your information protected. Number 1, never use public wireless networks to access sensitive information. If you need to get online to browse for directions or something else that is less sensitive, do it. But if you're trying to pay a bill or something similar, it can wait. Number 2, if you need to work whilst you're out and about, why not create a personal hotspot between your laptop and your phone? This might chew through more data, so it's important you make sure that your data allowance on your phone will allow for it, but it means that you're not having to bring in some sort of third-party device that you're not aware of. Most mobile networks also allow you to take your plan abroad for very little cost. So again, it's a really good way of being sure that the network you're using to get out and connect to the internet is something that's familiar with. Only browse websites that start with HTTPS and avoid websites that start with HTTP, specifically when you're on public Wi-Fi. Websites that have the HTTPS are encrypted, and this adds an extra layer of security and makes sure your browsing is more secure before you begin. If you connect to an unsecured wireless network and you use HTTP instead of HTTPS, your traffic is completely visible if a hacker is snooping around the network. Now, configure the wireless settings on your devices to not automatically connect to available hotspots. This ensures that you do not unknowingly connect to a public network. And you can do this by turning off the connect automatically feature on your smartphone, tablets, computer, so that they don't automatically connect. Doing this will prevent your computer from broadcasting to the world that it's trying to connect to home Wi-Fi or something similar. Consider also using a privacy screen if you have to access any information when you're out and about. Hackers are everywhere and they aren't afraid to use any means necessary to access your information. Privacy screens reduce the viewing angle on your device. So if your laptop is facing you and you were to tilt your head maybe 10 degrees in one direction, you will be unlikely to see what information is there. And again, very relevant if you're someone like me that works regularly in airports, on trains, Starbucks, anything. Lastly, treat and protect your mobile devices, such as smartphones and tablets, with the same precautions you would your laptop. It's amazing how often people will just connect to anything when they are anywhere in the world expecting all the security to be taken care of. You need to consider your own security. So I hope you got something from that around public Wi-Fi, because it's something that we don't really discuss often enough. So, final thoughts that I will leave you with. Never disclose security details, such as your PIN or full password. It's never okay. Nobody needs those full bits of information. Don't assume an email request or a phone call is genuine. People aren't always who they say they are. Don't be rushed. Listen to your instincts. A genuine bank or organisation won't mind waiting if you need some time to think about what it is that's there. If something feels wrong, it usually is, so pause and question it. Stay in control. Have the confidence to refuse unusual requests for information. Some of this is quite common sense, but when you're rushed and trying to get through something, or you're stressed out because your flight's delayed and you're trying to work from somewhere, or whatever the circumstances might be, it's really easy to drop your guard and to give the hacker that might be sitting not too far from you a really easy gig. So, that is me. My voice managed to hold up. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a sore throat today, so I wasn't sure if I was going to make it to the end of the presentation, but we got there. So finally, my details are there on the left-hand side. Please contact me for a one-on-one chat. Happy to chew over whatever it is you're thinking about. Questions, the Q&A is still open, so please fire them over. I will get answering those. Again, feel free to reach out after this if you've got any. The webinar is being recorded and it is going to be published, and we will send everyone that's registered for the webinar a link. Please share that around your teams. There's a lot of really good educational stuff. Hopefully you felt that in the presentation, and we're hoping that we can raise a little bit of awareness for people around this. Similarly, if you go to bisanywhere.co.uk/resources, you can see some webinars that we have, you can see previous webinars that we've got recorded, and you can register on that. And that includes the webinar from last month, which was focused around Microsoft Teams. So I will leave you with a thank you for joining and for listening to me ramble on. And yeah, I will speak to you soon. We will also announce, sorry, just one last thing to add in. We will also announce the next webinar, which will either be some point kind of later in this month or possibly in August. Subject is still TBC, so if anyone's got any ideas of things they want us to cover off, please do fire that over and we'll be glad to pull it. Thank you again.